If you've been following me for a minute, you've heard me talk about cable chops. If you don't know what they are, as an example right here. Ultimately, the goal of a cable chop is to selectively unweight portions of the body, which allow us to slowly reintroduce force and repattern force through the lower extremity, as well as how it propagates up the chain into the upper extremity. We can further use these selective unweightings in combination with different phases of propulsion to help achieve a better force handling and force propagation through the system. But what happens when the chops don't work? Well, then we have to start breaking down the movements themselves to figure out where the energy is bleeding out of the system. So we're going to go over a couple of the big things that I see in the weight room that are absolutely repairable to help improve the efficiency and efficacy of these chop beam movements. More often than not, the biggest first offense when it comes to chops is the spinning off in the direction of the cable movement itself. So say we have this left forward chop here, we might see an athlete spin off to the right as they reach towards their right heel to complete the movement. This could be a symptom of bad cueing, which we can just make simple adjustments and get them into the position they need to be in. But it could be an indicator of a bigger issue, being the lack of space to move into these chops, which will require greater attention leading up to the chops, meaning our foam rolling, our breathing resets, and our ability to develop space in these areas that we're looking to unweight and move into. The next big red flag is when we look at locked out joints or hyperextended joints. The big problem here is that a hyperextended or locked out joint may not allow energy to propagate through it and allow for the force to move through the system. This will reduce the efficacy of the chop itself and ultimately might create bigger problems down the chain when we're trying to actually move into the spaces that we're trying to create using the chops. More often than not, this can be remedied through simple cueing and allowing the athlete to kind of feel their way through the motion. In extreme cases, we may need to modify the line of pull of the cable, whether it be the height or the direction, or we may need to change the stance to selectively unweight in a different variation. Finally, we've come to an offense that took me a little longer than I would like to admit to start to realize. When we see an uneven distribution of force through our foot contacts, or not being able to maintain our heel on the ground. This altered stance may actually be to the detriment of the lifter as opposed to the benefit that we're hoping to create with the cable chop itself. By not applying force completely through all four of our foot contacts, we run the risk of altering the foot shape and potentially pushing the athlete into a later and later propulsive phase. This is a highly avoidable fault that may be overlooked by an untrained eye or a lesser skilled coach that doesn't understand the need for maintaining foot contacts in these positions. The simplest fix for this is cueing the athlete to stay balanced through their feet, applying pressure evenly through their foot contacts, and reaching towards their heel with the chop so that the line of pull with the cable is actually pushing them back in their base of support rather than allowing them to ride up onto their toes and entering a later propulsive phase. Keeping these three common faults in mind as we watch our athletes perform these cable chops may allow us to further evaluate their movement needs and capabilities, which will in turn give us the ability to modify their training to help improve their ability to find these positions, create the space they need, and slowly repattern force production through the entire system.